Welcome back to the Introduction to Psychopathy course. For this fifth lecture, we will be looking at the facet of affect. After this lecture, you will be able to demonstrate understanding of the affective facet of psychopathy and describe how traits and behaviours which are associated with the affective facet manifest within forensic and community samples. Carrying on with our use of items, we start with the lack of remorse or guilt. Here, psychopaths generally lack concern for the negative consequences of their actions. However, they are concerned about the effect which others have on themselves. Such actions and emotions are oftentimes not consistent with their words. For example, even if they are punished or apologize for a particular behavior, they still engage in said behavior in the future. Such individuals also have atypical feelings towards their victims. Some psychopaths will even blame the victims for their imprisonment. Going back to the psychopath Ted Bundy, who we discussed a couple of lectures back, here are some direct quotes. "I don't feel guilty for anything. I feel sorry for people who feel guilt. What's one less person on the face of the earth anyways?" Here we see a general lack of concern about the victim's well-being, and also a complete lack of remorse, placing the blame of the victim and those who also feel guilt. The shallow affect item notes that individuals who with high levels of psychopathy are unable to experience a normal range and/or depth of emotion, and as such they may feel emptiness, anger, or frustration for seemingly no other reason. Importantly, these expressions are not related to depression or ill mental health. Any emotions that individuals with psychopathy do have are oftentimes short-lived and shallow in nature. A quote by Robert Hare in 1991 in relation to this item says that psychopaths know the words but not the music. They know what these emotions mean, however, they just do not feel them. Emotions may also not be consistent with their behaviours. They may exaggerate their behaviours and lash out even in the presence of minor aggravating factors. A quote from psychopath Peter Curtin says that "I have no remorse as to whether recollection of my deeds makes me feel ashamed. I will tell you, thinking back to all the details is not at all unpleasant. I rather enjoy it." Now this is a direct quote from Peter Curtin, who was nicknamed the Vampire of Dusseldorf. He was involved in arson and the murder of children during burglaries. He was also a sexual sadist who enjoyed returning to the scene to hear the neighbours discuss the offences. This individual was eventually captured and admitted to 10 murders and 31 attempted murders, all of which had a sexual element, including drinking the blood from one's victim's severed throat. And that's how they got the nickname, the Vampire of Dusseldorf. The seventh item, Callus and lack of empathy, notes a profound disregard for the rights and welfare of others, and these individuals are best described as cold or callous. Oftentimes in their early lives, psychopaths show animal cruelty. They enjoy hurting or mocking others, especially at their own detriment, and are oftentimes neglectful of family or children. The pain of others is simply abstract to them, and that they aren't able to emotionally intertwine themselves with the detrimental feelings of others. They aren't able to feel empathy. They oftentimes feel that emotions shown by others are just a sign of weakness and something that they would never show themselves. Here's a quote from Edmund Kemper, another psychopath. "With a girl, there's a lot left in the girl's body without a head. Of course, the personality is gone." This is a note about a murdered girl and how she still serves some utility, even though she is now dead. A complete lack of empathy or remorse when talking about the victim and their body. 8. A failure to accept responsibility for their behaviour. Psychopaths are unwilling to accept personal responsibility for their actions or consequences. They oftentimes look for attitudes to fairness of sentence and performance of their legal representative. If they end up locked up in prison for their offence, It is down to the fact that their legal representative did not do their job properly, and as such, it isn't their fault that they are now imprisoned. We can see that they blame others, even their victims, and they minimize the effects of their offending upon the victims. I only did this. I only did that. Here's a source from Ian Brady and Myra Hindley. Ian Brady mentioned, "My strange raised Borstal experience, it created a resolve never again to commit petty crime, but to emulate the legal and moral elasticity of the privileged. Humans are predisposed to murder one another." As we see, Ian Brady is taking no responsibility for their actions. Instead, they are saying that humans are predisposed to murder, and as such, that is the reason for his behaviour. He is failing to accept responsibility for his own actions. For the fifth activity, I would like you to access the following interview given by Edmund Kemper from 1991. Should you wish, there are also several other interviews available for you to analyse here. Whilst watching the interview, try to identify any quotes whereby Edmund Kemper talks in a manner which is encapsulated by the affective facet of psychopathy. Consider Edmund's appearance and body posture as they discuss their crimes. What do you notice? Please note that some of these interviews may be a little disturbing, so you should skip them if you do not want this unpleasantness. This brings us to the close of Lecture 5. Throughout this lecture, we have discussed the 4 components which make up the affective facet of psychopathy. These include a lack of remorse or guilt, shallow affect, callousness and a lack of empathy, and a failure to accept responsibility for behaviour. In Lecture 6, we start to move on to the second factor of psychopathy, that of antisocial behaviour and a parasitic lifestyle.